Alrighty. First time I ever said alrighty. And you know what? I didn't like that. But
Yeah,
welcome
that
back to
was
the
kind of
Paisan
corny.
Sports
That was kind of
podcast.
corny. You're the meatball of the week. Let's just start off with the meatball of the week, and we can just dedicate it to you.
Welcome back to the Paisan Sports podcast. Presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. That just reminds me I need to fill out my March Madness bracket. Dante DePlacido joined as always by Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I've got to ask, what's the deal with spring training? And when I say that, I mean traveling for it. Oh, let's go down to Clearwater. Let's go see the Phillies in spring training. Hey, genius, you can see them up here. And you don't have to buy a plane ticket. No hotel room. They're right there. Go over the bridge. It's like $40 for a game. Probably the same price as a spring training game. But you go all the way down there, and it's not even a real game. It's spring training. You're watching guys like Rick Gotis Jr. It's not even the full starting lineup. What's the deal with that?
Why'd you just throw a shade at one of our best prospects?
I know I couldn't think of like an obscure prospect off the dome, so I just went with Rincones Jr. But yeah,
You're still the guy
I've
giving.
never
You're still the guy
understood.
giving positive updates on Johan Rojas throughout the spring training, and then you're trying to justify, talking some smack on
I didn't mean to
guy
talk
that
smack
has an
on
actual
Rincones Jr.
promising.
I should have said Mick Abel. I should have said Mick Abel,
Yeah,
but
that would have been completely fair, and I don't think anybody. I think Mick Abel himself would enable you to say that about.
oh, but yeah, no, I've never really seen the hype with going to Florida for spring training. I've just never gotten the hype. Oh, we can see
Yeah,
the
I
Phillies
never. It's
down
never
there.
been something that I've even
Nobody gets
considered.
excited to go to the Wells Fargo Center for a Sixers preseason game, or the link for an Eagles preseason. Maybe the link for an Eagles preseason game because it's much more affordable. Um, but you're going all the way down to Florida, and it's to watch a preseason game. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't understand it either, but everybody has their own little niche, but that doesn't get it going for me. I'm actually thinking that spring training just goes on for way too long. I'm just ready for
It
regular
does go
season
on for
baseball,
a while, doesn't
especially
it?
today. I get up early in the morning and I go and work out in the morning. So I actually was up watching the Tokyo series today. And once you see like regular season baseball being played, I can't even like think about a spring training game. You know what I mean? Now it's like completely in the rear view. And I just wanted to get to next Thursday, the 27th, when all the teams end up opening up on opening day. So really excited for the Phillies season. I'm just excited for a sport. Baseball is just like a different type of sport. Like basketball is very up tempo, up pace. Football is so intense because it's only one time a week. There's only one game. Obviously, there's some times where you play on a Sunday and a Thursday or something like that. But everybody knows that they don't. Thursday night football is probably the least enjoyable NFL event that they put on weekly. But baseball, just having it on almost every single day. It's like what, on 5-6 days a week your favorite team's playing. And it's just really fun, especially in the division that the Phillies play in the NL East, which I think they're second in the odds to win, with the Braves as the leaders and the Mets at like plus 220ish to win the division. So what do you think? What do you think about with the Phillies? We've talked about the Phillies and what they can accomplish this season, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But what do you think about when you look at the rest of the NL East and how it's shaping up? We know the Marlins are pretty much probably the worst team in the league, right there with the Chicago White Sox. I would say right now.
Nationals are also pretty bad.
Nationals have some decent talent, though. They have a couple
They got
guys.
some good young talent,
They
but
have
they're
the
not a
outfielder
good team.
Nathaniel Wood. He's pretty good, and they also got CJ Abrams at shortstop.
They got a lot of really good talent in that Juan Soto trade. That ended up being a pretty good trade for the
I think that's where
Nationals.
Abrams came from, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is. But in the NL East, I think on paper, I think the Phillies have the third best record. I mean, not record, the third best roster on paper, in my opinion. With the Mets adding Juan Soto in the offseason and the Braves getting back healthy. I'm still very excited for the Philly season. I'm excited for baseball. I'm excited to see what ends up happening with Andrew Painter, to see how good of a season Bryce Harper can have, with how hot he's been in spring training. I'm excited to see if Johan Rojas performs better this season. I have a feeling he might. I think they'll be a third place wild card. I think they'll be third in the NL East, but they'll have a very good record and they'll make the wild card. I predict
You
that
think so?
they.
You're saying that you think that both the Mets and the Braves are going to finish in front of the Phillies?
Yeah, I think so. I think
What do you think
the
gives you what would you say? Because obviously the Braves at full strength, even though they lost some of their pitching from their starting rotation, but they're obviously going to get Spencer Strider back. Ronald Acuna might miss a little bit of time at the beginning of the season, but we know how good he is, especially stealing bases and just the power threat and just the overall player that he is. He's one of those guys that's literally good at everything. Like Juan Soto, you're pretty much paying for a bat, a guy that struggles in the outfield, but like when Ronald Acuna breaks the bank with the contract that he'll sign eventually. I mean, you're paying for a 5-tool player. You know what I mean? So, but what do you think gives the Mets the edge over the Phillies?
well, first of all, the Mets proved they were better than the Phillies last year, and now you throw Juan Soto into that equation, who
You didn't think that was more so of an isolated incident? Because I feel like the Phillies did get embarrassed and the Mets did win handedly and pretty much dominated the Phillies. They were just more timely hitters. They had guys like Mark Vientos just going crazy at the perfect time. Pete Alonso hit that electric home run and just the tear that Francisco Lindor was on, and then you had guys like Jesse Winker that could step up, and there wasn't really a guy that was like a role player for the Phillies that could step up. But I felt like in the past, the Phillies really had their number. Do you think that was more so like one incident that happened and the Phillies kind of were not playing their best baseball, or do you think that's a theme that's just going on and they added one of the best players in the league in Juan Soto?
I think, yeah, I think it maybe was a bit of an isolated incident, but then you add Juan Soto to that is kind of my point. You know what I mean? Like Juan Soto is the kind of guy that if he has the season you expect from him, you're looking at like an 8 WAR or something of that matter, which you're adding 8 wins onto the New York Mets record. So I think
I
with
thought it was also huge that they retained Pete Alonso too. He's not the greatest player, but just to have that power threat to protect Juan Soto in the lineup as well to bring him back, I felt like that was also a
yeah,
gigantic move in the right direction for them.
yeah, so I mean, I think the Mets are gonna finish with a bit of a better record. I think the Braves are gonna run away with the division. I think the Phillies are gonna be right behind the Mets, and I think in terms of the wild card standings, you're gonna have one Mets, two Phillies, and then whichever team ends up making that third wild card seed.
Well, I'm pretty
Um,
sure I saw the power rankings for MLB Network, and they had the Dodgers at number one and the Phillies at number two.
I don't agree with that. I don't know why. It's so weird to me. It's like anytime us Philly fans are hype on one of our teams, they just get disrespected constantly. And then when we end up being like not as high on them, then all of a sudden the national media is high on them. It's kind of annoying in a way. Um, but yeah, I mean,
Well, I
I
feel
think
like
the
also
Phillies are still
people
going to
like
have a
really
great regular season. I think the Phillies, in my opinion, I think this is a 90-win Phillies team. I think their starting rotation is going to be that good, and it's going to get them a lot of wins in the regular season. I don't think they have the offense to win in the postseason. So I don't think they're going to go far, but I think it's going to be a very fun regular season with a lot of wins, and that's kind of just what I'm looking forward to.
I think a lot of people expect Trey Turner to play a lot better than he did, and I feel like Trey
I
Turner.
don't. Here's the thing. Why are people acting like Trey Turner was? He batted over
I
290
I
last
was
season.
just about to say the exact same thing. I was about to say he didn't even really play that bad, but just for the
He
standard of
didn't
him,
play
I
bad
feel
at
like
all,
people
in my
got
opinion.
hypnotized. People got hypnotized when they saw him in the World Baseball Classic and they saw all those home runs that he
Yeah,
was hitting.
they
And it looked like
expect
it was
him to
batting
be.
practice,
They
and they thought
expect
that
him
he was going
to
to be the next
play
Barry
like
Bonds or
god
something.
tier baseball. Like Trey Turner is a great
But he
baseball player.
does. I mean, but he also
He
in
was
big
an all
moments.
star too. He
I
had
know, but
21
also in
home
big
runs,
moments he did.
batted 295.
And there was
stole
big
19.
moments that he
Well,
did not show up in. That is correct, though.
yeah,
So
he,
that
he didn't really show up in the playoffs, but nobody other than Nick Castellanos showed up in the playoffs last year.
yeah, I think they need to
And
change
he
their
showed up
approach.
in the playoffs in 2023. 2020.
I think they need to just iron out their lineup, get the correct lineup out there. One positive thing is Max Kepler has looked really good in spring training. It looks like he has actually some decent pop in the bat. So if they can add somebody that's kind of like comparable to the power that they're missing from Reese Hoskins from a few years ago. Reese wasn't the greatest hitter in the world, but he was definitely threatening with the power that he had in his bat. So if they can add like another power bat into the lineup, because they really haven't since Reese has left, they really haven't like brought in a guy, even like a utility type guy that just has like big pop in the bat. They really didn't bring in anybody like that. And it looks like the potential there could be with Max Kepler. So um, we'll see how long they'll refrain from doing a platoon in the outfield. That's their biggest kryptonite. They have one of the best infields overall. They have a guy like Alec Boehm that's an all-star that's still on the younger side of things. That's a really good batter. He's not the greatest defensive player. You got a guy like Bryson Stott that batted 240 last year, but is closer to like a 280 hitter for his career. And he's also a really good defensive probably should be playing shortstop, if we're being completely honest. Bryson Stott should probably still be the shortstop, like back with the Gene Segura days, and probably move Trey Turner over to second base or even into the outfield. But that's a conversation for another day. But if you just look at the infield and the talent that the Phillies possess, it's really just we're always having the conversation on the podcast about the outfield and what they can do with it. Nick Castellanos holds down that right field spot, but it just they haven't been able to get the center field and left field spot corrected. And they didn't even really have it down pat, honestly, in 2022 when they made the World Series when Kyle Schwarber was just over there. It was kind of like a stopgate thing defensively wise. But and there was a couple of times in the playoffs with Kyle Schwarber where it haunted them in the Astros series, especially how funky the Astros ballpark is. But yeah, I think that's one of the overlying themes, and they addressed it. Apparently, they last off season or last time at the trade deadline, they tried to get Austin Hayes, who had all these obscure things going on with him since he became a Philly, and that didn't work out. And they're going with another platoon type player, trying to make him into a starting outfielder. So we'll see how it goes, but.
yeah,
Uh,
I don't
the,
see that
the issue
happening.
is it's not just left field, it's also center field too. So they need to get everything corrected
I
there. That's
expect
the only thing that
I
really scares me. I'd also the
I
bullpen.
expect a breakout season from Johan Rojas. I'm calling it now.
I
Johan
don't even like
Rojas,
I
2025 breakout season. I'm calling it, baby.
it's like we're having the same conversation about Johan Rojas for 3 years now.
Okay, not for 3 years now. Okay,
It's two
he
years,
came
going on
out
to the
his
third year.
rookie year. He played great. We weren't even doing the podcast during that time. Okay, I think that was during our hiatus. And then okay, yeah, and then last year, I expected more from him because he got jacked in the offseason, and I was like, Johan Rojas, he's gonna be great, and it didn't happen. Right? That happens, but I'm doubling down. Okay. I am doubling down. This is the second year I'm saying this. I'm allowed to double down. Give me a double down. I'm doubling down. Johan Rojas 2025 breakout season. If it doesn't happen this year, I won't say it again next year. But I think 2025 will be a breakout season for Johan Rojas.
What makes you put the chips back onto the table and push them
The
towards the
chips
door?
never left the table. They never left. All right.
They
He still
definitely left
has it
because
in him.
you were getting your chips
Baseball,
taken
listen,
because there was no
baseball
production, you were
with
losing.
baseball, it's not just long seasons, it's long careers. All right. You have one great season, you have a bad
Johan
season, then
Rojas
you have
might
a
not
couple
be in
great
the if
seasons.
Johan Rojas keeps playing the way that he's been playing in his career, the lopsided, really good defender, really fast, but not a good base runner for some reason. Um, and
Listen,
shaky
Miners,
offense.
first year in the pros, he can hit. You know what I'm saying? And he'll hit again this upcoming
We'll be
year.
talking about trading for a center
Breakout
fielder
year
or
for
left
Johan
fielder.
Rojas. Clip it.
We'll be
Clip
talking
it.
about like an outfielder
Clip
needing to be
it.
traded for.
Tell you what, I already did my Eagles thing, so I'm going to do a Johan Rojas thing. Okay, if Johan Rojas has a breakout season
You also need to honor
2025.
that. By the way, you need to honor that bet too. I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
staring
I'll
at your
honor it.
hair.
I'll honor it.
When you were
Anyway,
talking about that, I was thinking about that exactly, and I was just thinking about the buzzer going to your head. And
anyway.
honor that.
Now, for a breakout season, we need to have we can't
Well, that's
breakout
also
season. That's
a
too loose of
breakout
a
season.
definition. So
A
I'm going to lay
breakout
it out.
season. The standard
I'm
is
going to
really
lay
low
it.
for him.
I'm going to lay it out. I'm going to lay it out. Breakout season for Johan Rojas. Okay, he needs to bat 275 or above. Okay. Now, he doesn't have much power, so I'll say 5 or more home runs, which for him, that would be insane. We're talking about 2 home run guy. 5 home runs or more, 60 plus ribbies, 60 plus ribbies for it because he's more of a singles guy.
The
So I'm
Phillies,
going
the
to say
Phillies thought it was a
275
good.
or above,
The Phillies
60
last
plus
offseason
ribbies.
or last trade deadline, they thought it was a good idea to trade for a reliever and make him their number one guy, a dude that gave up a home run to Johan Rojas and Carlos Estevez. So just think about that for a second.
Yeah, kind of funny. But anyway, 5 home runs, 60 plus ribbies, 275 or above batting average,
60
on base
ribbies. You're
percentage,
out of your mind.
of 320 or higher, and at least 15 stolen bags.
All right,
If
I have
Johan Rojas meets those numbers in 2025, I will post a shirtless workout video.
that's not, no one even wants to see that. So
Exactly. I don't want to
no,
have to do that because I know no
no one
one's going
wants
to
to
want to
see that.
see it.
I'm
And I didn't want to have to shave my head. And I mentioned that with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and it happened. So I'm putting that on Johan Rojas' breakout year. Lock down those stats.
I'm looking at there's no chance that Johan Rojas is even on here, but I'm looking at there's a 60 plus RBIs on DraftKings right now. There's no chance Johan Rojas' name is even. Oh, this is all like favorites to.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, anyway,
he's
it's
not on
now
there.
time for my meatball of the week. And my meatball of the week is another repeat offender. Not like we had a repeat offender last week, but we've had some repeat offenders. This guy actually, I would have to check the tape, but he might be the first ever three-time meatball of the week. That's word to Booker T. I think I might be pronouncing his last name wrong because I think I heard somebody else pronounce it differently. But Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen is yet again my meatball of the week. Why? One, I couldn't really think of a better meatball of the week, and this works as a good segue if I'm being completely honest. But also because Joe Schoen has let yet another key contributor to the New York Giants walk away and go to the Philadelphia Eagles. And this guy, he's another former dog, another former Georgia Bulldog. Talking about Aziz Ojulari, a guy who, with Vic Fangio, might make a big impact on that Eagles defense. Might be another guy to go to the Eagles and then elevate his level of play. And then the Giants are going to feel salty yet again. So Joe Schoen or Joe Shane, Joe Schoen, whatever. You don't even deserve to have somebody pronounce your name correctly. You're my meatball of the week.
That was a weak meatball of the week.
It was, but I couldn't think of anyone better. You
You're
couldn't
also
either.
talking about you said
None
a
of us.
key contributor when they literally just traded for $120 million pass rusher and Brian Burns, and they drafted a guy with the 7th overall pick that starts over. Both of them start over Aziz Ojulari.
It's
So
about
that's why.
rotation.
No,
Look, I'm trying to jazz up the meatball of the week. Okay, I'm trying to throw a little
you got to jazz it up by
crushed
actually being
basil on
original and not
top,
just like
a
saying
little Pecorino Romano Locatelli brand. Okay,
you
you know what
went
I'm
with
saying? Maybe put it into a sandwich, get some
you went
mozzarella
with
in there,
the Giants
maybe a little
meatball of
bit
the
of
week for the
vodka
8th time.
sauce.
You went for the 8th time talking about the Giants for the meatball of the week or the What's the Deal segment, which is just
Three
yawn
times.
and boring. No, it's
3 times.
this is you've talked about the Giants and referred to them
You know
as
what? They deserve it. They
6 times.
deserve it. Why would this
They're
be
so
a Philly
irrelevant that
sports
it's
podcast if we don't get to make fun of the Giants? Look, you want a
Paisan,
meatball of the week? That's the best I got. Okay, if not, you can take it or leave it with the meatball of the week in that case.
well, you just need to be more original and just find something that
Well,
I wouldn't
maybe
even
Joe
expect it.
Schoen shouldn't keep fucking up. Maybe that. Maybe
I
that
mean, you're talking about a dude that just left for $4 million. He's a good player, but they have two guys that are better than him at
might be a
that
breakout.
position.
Might be a breakout year. Well, he already did have an 11 sack season, so
Yeah, that was the first year that he was the player. I like him. I'm not, trash him or anything, but he had 6 sacks last year, I think, in like 11 games. I like the percentage. I think he didn't play that many snaps last year, and he already had 6 sacks. So imagine if he actually played a full season. So I'm actually excited about that. He's also young. I don't think he turns 25 until like June. So they're getting a young pass rusher, and it's the seventh Georgia Bulldog that is now on the roster. And this isn't the seventh Georgia Bulldog that's on the roster. This is the seventh Georgia Bulldog that has all played together that is now on the roster with each other. So it's just crazy that they keep accumulating these guys, and we'll see the roles that they'll play. And if Azeez Ojulari plays a role, and then you have Keely Ringo step up and play one of the outside corner spots, then what? You're getting contributions from Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Keely Ringo, and Azeez Ojulari. I wouldn't really put
N'Kobe
my
Dean. You forgot Dean.
yeah, I forgot N'Kobe Dean too.
Yeah, yeah,
He's
that's a lot of
injured.
Georgia
So.
Bulldogs, and there's also a possibility they draft Xavier McKinney, and then that's another Bulldog. That would
Xavier
be that would
McKinney
be
is
the
the safety.
majority of
You
the
just said
starting defense. What?
you just said Xavier McKinney.
But
Malachi Starks.
I screwed that.
Xavier McKinney's the dude the Giants left. You are obsessed with the Giants, bro. He's the dude that left the Giants for the Packers. You're obsessed with him. What do you do? Like Giants rebuild on there, and like you just act as their GM and just try and revert all the moves that they make. Like,
Listen, I'm a professional hater, okay? But yeah, no, if they do draft Malachi Starks as well,
yeah, but I'm
uh,
like when you see a guy like Nick Emanware, you don't even want to like think Malachi Starks way. Like if we're going safety, I'm going Nick Emanware.
I'm going another dog, another bulldog. Um,
You're gonna pass up on a 6'3", 225 pound, 43-inch vertical leap, 4.3 running safety.
for the sake of the bit, yeah. No, not
You're
literally, but
just
it would be cool. It would be cool though.
No, it would definitely be
Um,
cool, but I feel like it might be overkill. They could also target the other pass rusher too. There's two good pass rushers that are coming from Georgia. The one, Jalen Walker, actually is an off-ball linebacker that plays edge as well. So he's like a tweener, but he's going to go really high in the draft, probably top 10. And then there's the other edge rusher, Michael Williams, who has a chance to slip further towards where the Eagles will be drafting. But we also have all those fifth-round picks. We're still accumulating compensatory picks for some of the
and
free agents that we lost, like Mekhi Becton, which we haven't even talked about losing Mekhi Becton yet because that
yeah, we'll
happened
get to
even
that.
before then.
But
So
in
that's
terms
another
of
draft pick.
draft picks, while we're on that topic, they still, in my opinion, are likely to secure yet another draft pick when they trade Dallas Goddard, which I think is going to happen.
Oh yeah, well they signed two tight ends, but it wasn't really anybody. It wasn't like they went out
No,
and
it
targeted like
wasn't anybody
Evan
crazy,
Ingram.
but I think they look at Grant Calcaterra as their starting tight end. So the tight end signings
I
were
don't
more so
believe
for
so.
depth, in my opinion. I think Calcaterra did very well when he had to step in as tight end one. So I would not be surprised if Goddard gets shipped
You
out.
also have to realize there's not, you can it's easy to swim with the fish when you're playing on an offense like the Eagles. You know what I mean? Like even the offensive linemen, as good as the offensive line at full strength when it was, when they had to have like Fred Johnson, the tackles are hard to not keep out on an island and get exposed by edge rushers when they're out there. And Fred Johnson kind of struggled like in that Giants game and stuff like that. But at guard. Like they really didn't miss a beat, regardless who was in there. Like Tyler Steen and Mekhi Becton's a better player than Tyler Steen, but they didn't really miss a beat. Grant Calcaterra, he's definitely a guy that was a solid draft pick for where he was drafted at. But in my opinion, he's definitely not a starting tight end. I think they're more so kind of if they're moving on from Dallas Goddard and signing these two back end guys like Harrison Bryant and Kylan Grayson. I think it's more so alluding to the fact that they could be drafting a tight end pretty high this season. I mean, I don't know if I wouldn't really say in the first round. Tyler Warren's definitely not going to be in their range unless they trade up, and I don't see them forging a lot of their future to go up and get a tight end, especially, I just don't see that happening. Maybe Michigan's Colston Loveland could drop to their range, but he's also looking like he'll be a top 20 pick. If they really, really like him, maybe they'll go up and get him. But there's some other pretty decent tight ends too. You got Mason Taylor from LSU. You got the kid from Miami, Arroyo. Um, and you have Fannin from Bowling Green. So you got a couple tight end options there in the draft. So I feel like they could go out and make a move. Hey, I wouldn't even put it past Howie. What if the splash move he's been waiting on is to go pounce on like Kyle Pitts? You know what I mean? Imagine if they traded
Now, I
Dallas
don't think
Goddard and
that's all right.
pounced on Kyle
Guy's a
Pitts.
disappointment.
Kyle Pitts is actually from the Philadelphia area too. He went to high school around this way, so it actually makes sense for them to bring him back. They brought like Olamide Zaccheaus and
I
DeAndre
liked
Swift back from
Zaccheaus,
high school.
man. I liked
He's a
Zaccheaus. So
solid player,
to see him
dude. Did
go.
you see how many players the Washington signed like their entire roster like over like a week stretch of time in free agency? They literally signed. They must have signed like 30 players to like
They
1 year
they, they
deals.
got busy. They definitely got busy. We've been
They
busy
got busy, but
filling
did
up
they get
inventory
better?
for
Like,
a
how much
while.
better do you think the Commanders got? Like in a world where they're actually in the like the hierarchy of the NFC now, and they could like consistently contend and maybe even beat a team like the Lions and like replace a team like the
What do you mean?
Cowboys.
Maybe even be a team like the Lions? They did do that, and
No, I'm
then they
saying
added talent.
no,
So
I'm saying like consistently beat a team like the Lions is what I'm saying.
yeah, I mean, I think they are going to be that upper echelon of teams.
They're setting
I
like a core foundation too. That's the thing. Like they're getting guys like they have a lot of guys that are on like 1 year deals that are they have flexibility with the roster through Jaden Daniels era, but they also did bring in some core guys that could be there for a decent amount of time. That solidifies their offense got a lot better. I'm scared that Washington might target a running back in the draft and they might go after a running back. And if they get a running back in that offense that could be a true difference maker, there's a lot of difference making running backs in this draft. They wouldn't even have to really spend a high pick on one, and they still have some resources. I mean, we gave them some resources from the Cooper to Gene trade. So they have some draft picks from that trade too. I mean, I would be nervous if they got like a real high end running
I
back.
I still think their defense needs improvement, and they did lose Jonathan Allen. Um, I think their offense will be a problem. Their defense doesn't scare me. Um, I'm curious to see if Jaden Daniels can replicate his rookie year. I feel like typically, when quarterbacks have a breakout year in either their rookie or second season, usually they end up taking a step back the following year because NFL defenses kind of have them figured out. And then as they actually progress, then usually the third or fourth year is when they start really playing well again, but in a different way, in a more matured NFL way. Jalen Hurts is an example himself, in my opinion.
Yeah, but this is kind of the
Dak
outlier draft
Prescott is
class.
another example.
This is
So
like the outlier.
yeah,
This is like
no, Jaden Daniels is a great quarterback.
no,
Don't
no,
get me
no, no.
wrong.
But what I'm
And
the
Lamar Jackson, that's another example. That's
Well,
another
the point that
example as
I'm trying
well.
to make is like a guy, this draft class, I don't know if that's accurate towards these guys from this past year because they're all older guys that had a lot of experience. I mean, Jalen Hurts is like 2 years older than Jaden Daniels, and he's only played 1 year in the NFL. And
Yeah, but
Jalen
there's a lot more examples than just Jalen Hurts. Cam Newton's another one. After his original breakout year, he took a step back before having that amazing 2015 season. I could think of
Well, I'm just
probably
saying all
some
these
more
dudes are
examples.
older, so it's not like a 21-year-old busting onto the scene and then like he's still only 22 and then like the talent's still
I
there, but like
I,
he's
I
still
think
trying
and
to
if
figure
I
stuff out
but I
mentally.
don't think the age has anything to do with it. I think when quarterbacks, especially running quarterbacks like that, when they have a breakout year, typically NFL defenses figure out how to key in and stop them, and then that quarterback has to figure out ways to be great in the NFL. I'm not saying Jane Daniels is definitely going to take a step back. I'm saying I'm curious to see if he does, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does. That's no knock on Jaden Daniels. That's just the trend of NFL quarterbacks that I've noticed throughout the years.
No, yeah, I'm not trying to defend like I'm like saying he's like, a solidified stud. He's a great player for what he did last year, but he has to, build off it. It's only one season. Like when you have players even at a different position, quarterback's hard to compare to, but like Justin Jefferson, like he was electric in year one. Jamar Chase was electric in year one, and like they have been that good every season after that for that long, and like which has made them the two best receivers in the NFL. You know what I mean? And that's like when you start the conversations talking about the best wide receivers, it's always Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase because every single year that they've been in the NFL after their electric rookie season, they put up the same production. So if Jaden Daniels does what he did last year in his rookie year again this year, then I mean he's probably going to be in the top 5 quarterback conversation already and surpass a guy like Jalen Hurts because he would say that people would say, oh, he has, more of a skill set than Jalen Hurts has. He's faster. He has a bigger arm, this, that, the other. He was the second overall pick in the draft. And, I think as a quarterback, as a fan, I would say of a team, I don't really care how good or what the conversation is head to head about my quarterback versus your quarterback. I really care about what the head to head matchup looks like when their teams play and what their end result is. You know what I mean? So everybody that always makes these conversations out, and a lot of people in Philadelphia get butthurt because Jalen Hurts doesn't get his respect. And I think he does deserve more respect. But just at the end of the day, you always have to remember, like, it really doesn't matter if you're winning. And it doesn't matter how you do it as long as you win. And it always seems like Jalen Hurts always rises to the occasion when he's
And
needed most.
that's what makes Jalen Hurts great. The guy's a flat out winner.
Like in both Super Bowls, he played electric. You know what I mean? He had
Yeah.
one turnover in both of those games. Like he had one turnover in the first Super Bowl, one turnover in the second Super Bowl. Outside of that, played pretty much picture perfect and won the Super Bowl MVP when they won the Super Bowl and would have won it if they would have won the first Super Bowl. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's all you can really ask for out of your quarterback.
yeah, absolutely. I think we're gonna continue to see a lot more greatness out of Jalen Hurts. And just to segue into our next topic, we will have to see it without Mekhi Becton because he has now signed elsewhere, which, in my opinion, guarantees the starting right guard for the 2025 Philadelphia Eagles will be a guy that I've continued to be high on, and that is Tyler Steen. Usually you're asking me the question. Let me ask you this question. Do you think
Well,
the
you're like solidifying that as if they didn't just trade for a guy, and they didn't. Not only did they trade for
what
a
about the
guy,
guy from the Texans?
I mean, it's also like we got to think about what they put into that guy.
I
Tyler
don't think
Steen,
I don't think they have any plans for him to start. I think they just look at
I
that
mean, he's a
as a
former first
depth
round pick from.
acquisition.
He's a former
He was
first
he
round
was
pick.
like the worst ranked offensive lineman in the league
This
compared
is
to a
also
guy
a
like
guy.
Tyler
This is a
Steen,
guy that they
that showed
brought
real
in.
promise.
This is a guy that they brought in for a pre-draft visit that they already have familiarity with,
Yeah, but
and
that was before he played like crap in the NFL.
yeah, and he played like crap for the Houston Texans.
Listen,
The Houston Texans are a decent team, and they go,
this, in
in
my
the AFC.
opinion, the starting job is Tyler Steen's to lose, and without a doubt, in my opinion. I mean, like
And you want to
maybe
say the
Coach
exact
Gatlin
same.
can do
I
something
remember.
with this
I
guy,
remember
but as
when
of
we
right now, I think it's Tyler Steen for sure.
And I remember last year when we announced the Mekhi Becton signing, I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting that they signed them. And we kind of both just brushed over it. And I was saying, like, it'd be interesting. I didn't, I'm not saying that I predicted him playing guard, but like I thought there was a pathway to him playing, especially when they started talking about a position battle between Tyler Steen and Mekhi Becton. When that started being the conversation coming out of training camp, I was all for Mekhi Becton being the starting guy as a former first round pick. And that's the leverage that he'll probably get. And you have to think, as bad as Green had played with the Houston Texans, protecting a guy like CJ Stroud that was a franchise quarterback, they did trade CJ Gardner-Johnson, like a pivotal part of their defense, to acquire him. So it's not like something
Yeah,
like
and,
that.
well, I don't think
That's
that
not
was
just
why
I
they traded him because they wanted him. I think he was just thrown into the trade because it was like, hey, what can we get for CJ Garner Johnson? In my opinion, I
Yeah,
think
and
that's how the trade
you're not
probably
gonna
went
use stuff
down.
that's you're not gonna use the stuff that you get in a trade back when you return, especially a guy that was a first
No,
round
I
pick
think you
2
use him
years
as
ago.
depth. I think when you acquire a guy like that, I think you acquire a guy like that with the idea of, okay, here's a former first round pick. We have the best offensive line coach in all in football. We saw what he did with Mekhi Becton last year. It's worth it to bring this guy in, to give him to Coach Stoutland, see what Stoutland can do. If it ends up being a Mekhi Becton 2.0, great. If not, no big deal. And hopefully he can do a good job if we need him to step up. If there's an injury on the offensive line, hopefully he can be good depth for us at the very least. But I don't think you're like trading CJ Garner Johnson to get your new starting right guard and that guy. I think as of right now, if the season were to start tomorrow, it would be Tyler Steen. Is there a possibility that this guy pulls a Mekhi Becton and ends up transforming himself on the Eagles and wins the starting right guard position? Yeah, there's a possibility of it, but I think in all likelihood, your starting right guard is going to be Tyler Steen.
I mean, I think that's pretty fair to say, but I also think that, the entire conversation was led around Tyler Steen would have been on the roster without Kenyon Green ever in the mix if they never made that CJ Gardner Johnson trade, and everybody was still advocating for Mekhi Becton to be re-signed, knowing that Mekhi Becton is a better player than Tyler Steen. But since they pivoted off the Mekhi Becton route and they made it known that he pretty much wasn't coming back after they made that trade of CJ Gardner Johnson and brought Kenyon Green in, I think it's very interesting. And I would not say that, it's like if the season started tomorrow, probably based off of familiarity, Tyler Steen would be the guard. But once they get pads on in training camp, that's the only thing that's really going to matter. And I think it's going to be a battle that's going to be very interesting. And I think the Eagles wouldn't make a trade like that. They could have probably got more for CJ Gardner Johnson than that draft pick and a player like that if they didn't believe that they could actually mold that player into being something. And I think it's a risk that's if you're going to trade a guy like CJ Gardner Johnson out of the blue, this is the type of player. If you're going to get a player back in return, that you would like to get a former guy that had a lot of pedigree, and you have the resources and the tools to possibly retool him and make him a better player.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, look, we'll see.
We were
You
also
know,
having this conversation about Jeff Stoutland and like the toys and how the Eagles will set up the roster with guys we thought maybe like Trevor Keegan from Michigan, the 6th round pick from last year, could be molded into something. And we were talking about the Eagles finding ways to get Jeff Stoutland resources to be able to unlock some of these offensive linemen prospects around there, and the Eagles made it happen. So it's just interesting. It's crazy they traded CJ Gardner Johnson. And they said they wanted to get younger. Obviously, you just saw that Derek Stingley contract that was just handed out, 3 years, $90 million for a cornerback. So that's rivaling like wide receiver money now. So with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell needing contracts in the future, and then God forbid, Keelan Ringo turns into a superstar level player like the 9th overall high school prospect that he was, and the superstar that he was at Georgia, returning a pick six in the national championship to close it out versus Bryce Young. God forbid he needs a contract too. Then they're handing out huge money to the cornerback position, but I guess that's a good problem to have. And I'd rather be the Eagles spending this type of money than like the Bengals spending that type of money at wide receiver to have their quarterback, and then they can't even pay a guy that had 17 and a half sacks 2 years in a row.
yeah, their defense is in trouble. Um,
What you we never actually even discussed that before. Everything was, ventured around to Myles Garrett, and that was like all the conversation everybody wanted to have. But how do you feel about Trey Hendrickson? Like if he actually were to be moved, do you think he would be a fit for the Eagles?
I think any pass rusher would be a fit for the Eagles, which brings me to one of the final two signings that I want to talk about today before we go into the big breaking news that happened today. Um, before we then go on to the Sixers. Josh Uche or Josh Oosh. I kind of like to call him Josh Oosh. I like Oosh
That's just
better.
not his name, though.
But I like it, Josh Oosh. It's just me,
No, I'm
Oosh.
gonna hold you to a standard because everybody that used to watch the podcast way back in the day, if you're still watching it
I
now,
did not
used to
call Marcus
always be
Simeon
he used to
Marcus
be
Seaman.
pummeling me over mispronunciations of words.
Anyway, I like this Josh Uche signing a lot. Again, another signing that's not like a big signing, but none of these have been big signings. But I think this is a guy that has showed promise earlier in his career. I think with any pass rusher, who knows what they'll be capable of in Vic Fangio's defense. I think his measurables are really good. I'm excited to see if he can make the roster and get anything done in the Eagles uniform.
I think he's definitely going to make the roster. He's a little undersized. He's like 6'1", 245, but he's had another guy that had a big season with the Patriots back in the day. And something that's interesting about him, he's another guy that's efficient with his pass rushing snaps. Like, he doesn't play the most defensive snaps, but he gets after the quarterback. I think that season that he had the most sacks. Let me look at it real quick. I tweeted it out. Let me get the tweet up about Josh Uche. Let me see. New Eagles linebacker Josh Uche produced 11.5 sacks in 2022, only playing 38% of the Patriots' defensive snaps. In comparison, year prior to signing with Philadelphia, Bryce Huff had 10 sacks on 42% of the Jets' defensive snaps. Both same age, but cost vastly different for rotational pass rush help. That's what I tweeted. So, he's pretty comparable to what Bryce Huff had for the one season, but they're not paying him $17 million. And I think one thing is I kept bloating about how the Eagles had their two highest defensive players, like highest paid defensive players last year, just sit out the Super Bowl and as scratches, and they still won the Super Bowl, and it was kind of flexing itself. But now I'm just thinking about it, kind of set in with me that Bryce Huff contract is what made them not be able to pay Josh Sweat.
Don't don't say that to me. That makes me
I mean,
bummed out to
he's
hear.
making $17 million a year, and we could have paid
Yeah,
two
that's
more
a good
million for Josh
point.
Sweat.
Oh, that
And
that sucks
we
to
just
hear.
think about this. Bryce Huff just got given the Bryce or Zach Bond just got given the Bryce Huff contract as a reward for his fifth in the
Yeah,
most.
that Brave Hut that
3
Brave
years,
Hut
51
signing was
million.
a big
Bryce Huff got the
mistake.
3 years, 51 million off the
I
10.
also don't get, why didn't they just give that money to Hassan Reddick and keep him on the roster? But listen, not everyone's perfect. Howie's not perfect, and we still won a Super Bowl. But
I know it's just when we're losing all these guys and no one's really actually pinpointed it to, like, it's right in front of your face. Like, we would never say, oh, we paid Saquon Barkley at the time 13 million and we couldn't keep this player like that. Like, imagine how south the season would have went if Saquon didn't have a good season and didn't lead us to the Super Bowl the way that he did and set the record for most rushing yards in the playoffs and the regular season combined. Imagine if it went like that way, and then the conversation around here was, oh, well, we gave Saquon 13 million and we couldn't pay Hassan Reddick and we had to trade him to the Jets. Like, imagine if that was the conversation, the purgatory that we would be in. But
yeah, that would be even worse. Speaking of Saquon, it's time for me to mention the final signing I wanted to talk about today. The only guy who can match the quads of Saquon Barkley, a guy who I didn't even realize they called the Quad Father, AJ Dillon. Um, another signing where it's like, if he plays his best football, it's a great signing. If he plays his worst football, he might not even make the team. But it's definitely a signing to be excited about. It's a sign that's excited to see what he can do as the secondary back to Saquon Barkley, and it's also exciting to see if this elevates the tush push even further. When if you got Saquon and AJ Dillon pushing Jalen Hurts. you could run that shit from the 5 yard line.
Coming from the
So
franchise that was just trying to ban it.
yeah, that actually I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that would be really funny if they try and ban it. AJ Dillon goes to the Eagles, and it just makes the tush push even more efficient.
AJ Dillon, I mean, I like that signing a lot. I don't think
Yeah,
there's
me
even a,
too.
I don't really see a vision of where he would play his worst ball to him not making the roster. I don't even think that's possible. I think he's definitely going to make the
Yeah, I
roster.
think you
And
never know.
I kept talking about, like, I was talking about a guy like Miles Sanders coming back. Like, I'm not a huge Miles Sanders guy, and I don't like want to sound like a fanboy or a homer by saying I want him to return. I just wanted a running back that was more comparable size wise and like playing style wise to Saquon, and getting a guy like AJ Dillon that's a big back that complements Will Shipley and Saquon Barkley because they all differ from each other. I'm actually excited about this overall backfield. I think there's still room for Will Shipley to get work too. They all offer different
Yep.
things. And Will Shipley could keep his prominent role on special teams as a returner, as a
Mhm.
special teamer that's making
Well, they
big
also
plays and
did bring in
turnovers.
a they
So
did bring in a kickoff and punt returner. They did bring in one of those guys as well.
Avery Williams, yeah, from
Yeah.
the Falcons.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting.
Well,
They
that
also
you know what
did
that
bring in
says?
a new long snapper,
This is
so
something that
that
we've been
likely spells the end of, Rick Lovato's, run in Philadelphia, which is
yeah,
a little
well, we're
heartbreaking.
talking about a guy retiring as a one of the 4 two-time Super Bowl champions in Philadelphia history, but
I
they really
know.
lost 2 of the two-time
Yeah.
Super Bowl champions
And
of all
that
time.
brings us
But
to our final Eagles topic. A legend is leaving us. A man who spent 15 years in Philadelphia, a man who, without him, we might only have one Super Bowl trophy. A man who every week on the post game show would let Derek Gunn hear it. That is a reference to true Philadelphia Eagles fans. Um, a man who talked trash like no other. A man who won 2 rings here. A man who had 76 and a half sacks. If that number is correct off the top of my head, I'll be a little impressed with myself. I'm talking about BG, Brandon Graham, number 55. He has announced his retirement today. And in the most beautiful thing ever, hung up his cleats on the Rocky statue. I think that was just perfection from BG.
yeah, we're losing a legend. This is a guy that was made it through 4 different coaching regimes with the Eagles. Just think about being an Eagles fan for the past like decade and a half. And all those times that you thought about the Eagles, Brandon Graham was on the roster. And it
Yeah.
was through the end of the Andy Reid era, the whole Chip Kelly experiment, the Doug Peterson, lightning in a bottle, and now the Nick Sirianni era that he helped usher in. So it's crazy. Uh, I don't know if this decision happened because he got hurt in the Super Bowl, or he did want to go out a champion, or was kind of a mixture of everything, or he was kind of leaning towards it because last season was actually supposed to be his last, and he ended up coming back and playing this season. I really hope that Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox would have done that. I know that the team ended up getting better. Not saying that Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox aren't all-time greats, but the team, needed to move on from those guys to grow from within and, get other guys into position to be able to, grow into the players that they are. Like a Cam Jurgens needed to start at center to grow into the Pro Bowler that he is now. And the same with Jalen Carter had to take on the responsibility as the alpha dog in the defensive line room with Fletcher Cox moving on. But I always just wanted them to be able to experience getting that second ring with the Eagles too. And I was happy that Brandon Graham was at least one of them of that core 4. I think when I'm an Eagles fan, I think about the guys that really made an impact in recent memory with the Eagles, and it's Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Graham, and Fletcher Cox. You know what I mean? That's like the 4
Yeah.
guys that really are like the staple of the Eagles in the past like 10, 15 years. And this was actually tough when I was listening to it. I actually, I wasn't getting emotional or anything, but I was just thinking about like, damn, I didn't think I would think the way that I'm thinking right now, like how upset that I actually am that this moment's actually happening right now, because I know he's not the exact player that he was. He grew into be a really solid player when his career started off. It took, what, 3 years for him to get started, to really get going with the Eagles. Everybody was calling him a bust. Everybody used to say, oh, we should have drafted Earl Thomas, especially with the initial success that the Seahawks and the Legion of Boom had. But as time grew on, and then Brandon
And
Graham
look
made,
who got more rings. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
Brandon
Look
Graham
who got
ended up
more rings.
making
BG, baby.
Brandon Graham ended up making the Philly special is cool and all, but the biggest play in Eagles history is the strip sack, and it's not even close.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Philly special was a great play, but I
That
think if
happened
not
in
for
the
that
second
strip
quarter of the
sack,
game. That
I
didn't
mean,
secure the Super Bowl victory.
Tom Brady was absolutely lighting it
Tom
up in
Brady
that
threw
second
for
half.
515 passing
Yeah,
yards and
I
hadn't
think if
gotten
not
touched
for that
one
strip
time
sack,
all day.
yeah, I think if not for that strip sack, I think Tom Brady would have marched right down the field and won the Super Bowl for the Patriots. Now, I got to ask you a question, which I can't even believe I'm asking this question, because I was asked this question earlier today. And my response was, this isn't even a question. But then somebody I know who's a true hater, he's just always hating. He claims to be an Eagles fan, but he's always hating. Of course, comes in and he disagrees, or his answer to this question was no. But my question is, do you retire number 55?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's the longest he's played with. He
Absolutely.
set records. The thing about Brandon Graham is he set records that are probably never even going to get sniffed or touched. He's the longest tenured Eagle ever. He's played the most games in Eagles history. And he's what? I think he's top 2 or 3 in sacks in Eagles history. So, I mean, yeah, 100% you retire it. I think how many numbers that do they have retired now? I think it's like 5 or 6.
They don't have many. I think they're about to have a lot, in my opinion. I think you retired
Well, this is
Jason
the era that's
Peters.
going
I
to
think
take it
you
up.
retired Jason
9
Kelsey.
players 9 players numbers retired. Number 5, Don McNabb. 15, Steve Van Buren. 20, Brian Dawkins. By the way, I used to hate how they gave Jay Ajayi, and I think Tristan McCollum wears it now. They give him Brian Dawkins' 36 number. That's like a number, like, I kind of get why it's not like officially retired, but I don't think that's a number that you should just be handing out lightly. You know what I mean? Number 40, Tom Brooks Shear. Number 44, Pete Resloff. 60, Chuck Bednarik. 70, Al Witzert. 92, Reggie White. And 99, Jerome Brown. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys that are on pace for their number probably to get retired. I think 65 is an absolute lock to get retired. Guaranteed.
65 is a lock. 62 is
62.
a lock.
Yeah, 62
I
is a
think
lock.
71. I mean, if Jason Peters were to have retired, right after he left the Eagles, I think it would be a guaranteed lock. But it just like I feel like his
I'm so
his
mad at him
Eagles
for that
career has
Cowboys stuff.
become such a
He would have
distant
to
memory.
apologize to my he would beat me up. I know that for sure, but he would have to apologize to my face for playing for the Cowboys. That really
Yeah,
upset
so
me.
I think it's a high likelihood that
You
he
remember
retires
back in the
71,
day
but
when
I
he
don't
got
think
the
that's a
bodyguard?
lock.
Do you remember when he got the bodyguard nickname, Jason Peters? What happened? Do you remember that at
Was
Washington
it the
Redskins?
the Nick Foles Chris Baker incident?
Yeah, the Chris Baker head on
Yeah.
Nick Foles on the
I still
interception return.
remember watching that live like it was yesterday.
I remember how like Chris Baker became a household name in Philadelphia because of the and yeah, that was a wild incident. But yeah, trying to think of some other guys that might be an absolute lock. I mean,
Well, so you got BG, Lane, Kelsey, Peters. Um,
I think like if we're talking now, like if we're making like an early prediction, probably since he's a homegrown guy too, Devontae is probably on pace for number 6 to be close to getting
I
retired.
think I think I think you have a bigger
Plus, there's
chance
not
with
that much
AJ
history with
Brown.
there's not that much history with the number 6 because, wide receivers weren't allowed to wear that number back in the day, or skill position guys, like how they had limited like numbers that you could wear. So like Devontae Smith's like really carved out his face as the number
If
6 in like Eagles
if we're
history.
going early predictions, I'm gonna stay in the trenches. I'm gonna say Jordan Mailata. I'm gonna say Landon Dickerson. I think those guys are my two early predictions. AJ Brown.
Well,
Um,
you have to be mindful that you have to be light on the lineman retirement numbers. Like you have to be real selective because
yeah, but I mean, listen, if they're legends, they're legends, which I
there's
think
only 29.
Mailata and Dickerson could finish their careers as legends. Um,
There's only 29 possibilities ever because they can't wear any
mhm.
number that's not
I guess
50.
that's something to consider then. But I'll stick with that prediction. I think another early prediction could be. I mean, this is a very early prediction, but I think possibly Jalen Carter. Um, in terms of the defense, that's really all. That's really all I've got in terms of the defense. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway,
see, we
anyway,
shall see.
final topic of the night. Um, Nick Nurse is a tanking legend. There's a lot you can say bad about Nick Nurse, in my opinion. There's a lot. But he is a tanking legend. The guy knows how to tank. He gets it. Last night, games on the line against the Houston Rockets, a team the Sixers would have no business beating. I mean, I would be livid on this podcast today if the Sixers got a win against the Rockets of all teams, right? And it was very
Number two
possible.
in the West.
Yeah, number 2 in the West. It was very possible. And you had a guy in Quentin Grimes who's been on fire since coming here, who was on fire last night, 46 points. You have a tie game, few seconds left, inbounds play. Who do you give the ball to? In any other scenario, you would say Quentin Grimes. But Nick Nurse, he just gets it, man. He knows how to tank. Who does he give it to? A name I could bet money everyone watching this podcast might have not even heard this name yet. Jalen Hood Shafino. He gives the ball to Jalen Hood Shafino for the final play. Hood Shafino gets an open mid-range jumper from the top of the key, and he bricks it. They go to overtime. The Sixers go on to lose. Listen, shout out to Nick Nurse, man. You love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, with the Sixers, all they need to focus on is losing right now. They ruled
Yeah.
Paul George out for the season, so that was my prediction.
And at the
The end of
time
the
of
podcast
doing this
production prediction.
podcast, they currently have the fifth worst record, 9.8% chance at the number one pick, all likelihood of keeping their pick at this moment of time. They do have a tough schedule coming up as well. So yeah, I mean that is somebody on Twitter compared that game last night, those incidents in the fourth quarter, the Rockets stealing the inbounds, the Rockets purposely missing the second free throw and getting the tip in to tie the game. People are comparing that to the Mike Muscala three in the bubble. And I think if they end up keeping their pick, and even if they get the number one pick, I think you go back to this game and it is similar to the Mike Muscala three, which led to the Sixers drafting Tyrese Maxey.
There's so many teams that are tanking right now across the NBA too. It's like a literal tank fest. Like
Yeah,
everyone's getting investigated. There's like 6 or 7 different investigations that are getting opened on teams that are tanking right now. So it's just
including the Sixers.
yeah, the Sixers included. Tyrese Maxey like getting held out with a back injury. So
Yeah,
that just
Maxey was healthy, and then all of a sudden he's not.
there's dudes
You
out
know,
around the NBA just getting
I don't even
ruled
know
out
what
with like
happened to Drummond. No one really even talks about Drummond. What the hell happened to
bro,
him?
his toe hurts or something, his big toes hurt or
Yeah,
something,
like
bro. Like,
this
would you
is
stub your
such
big toe?
this is
Like, come
so
on.
obvious from the Sixers right now. And I do think it's so funny, when you watch the NBA and you watch these tanking teams. I think what's so funny is the contrast when you have a guy like Cooper Flag as the consensus number one
There's
pick. And
also a guy that's like has been like recently hinting at going back to Duke too.
He has, yeah. But what I was gonna say is the difference between having a guy like Cooper Flag as the consensus number one pick, a guy like Wembanyama as the consensus number one pick, and then you have seasons like last year where like nobody cared to get the number one pick last year. I could not tell you off the top of my head who that even ended up being.
Zach
Um,
Ricochet
yeah.
and Alexander
So
Sarr was the second pick, I believe. It was
and
the
and
Hawks.
and that
I
was
think the Hawks.
another.
Didn't the Hawks like get the first pick out of like literally nowhere? I'm pretty sure they got the
Yeah,
Hawks.
and that was the reward for it. The funny thing too was the number one pick wasn't even the most popular name coming out of college. The most popular name coming out of college, I think, but without a doubt, was Zach Edey. That was like the name everyone knew. Outside of that, you had like Zach Edey and Jared McCain, and nobody really knew anyone else. But now you have a guy like Cooper Flag, who's just an absurd talent. The guy
He's
is
not the only one. They
ridiculous.
got Rutgers ended up not making the double NCAA tournament with two potential top three picks on their roster, and they ended up with a losing record this year. And they have Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper on the roster. Dylan Harper might be the second overall pick, and Ace Bailey is probably going to be the third overall pick, or Ace Bailey could even be the first overall pick. He's 6'9" and does is pretty much like Kevin Durant 2.0. So, and that was from Rutgers. So the Sixers, even if they don't get Cooper Flag with the number one overall pick and they just secure a top five pick, they're going to get an extremely talented player out of this draft. Or, I mean, who knows? Luka got traded. So just let that be known. Luka got traded.
Yeah.
Not only this isn't, what's not getting talked about is this isn't the first time that Luka's gotten traded. Luka got traded back in the day for
Well,
Trae
yeah.
Young. So like there was already like you had Luka in your grasp. Trae Young's a great player. He's not Luka.
No,
But the
definitely
Hawks
not.
had Luka. They had him. They could have just, went on about their business with Luka Doncic and, possibly made the East extremely interesting, but they didn't. And Trae Young, has made his mark on the East itself, especially Sixers fans know that. But that's an interesting thing in itself. But with me saying that and what I'm hinting at towards is the Sixers get one of this top five pick and they keep their pick. And if guys like Luka Doncic are getting traded, who knows what random young superstar throughout the NBA could become available that the Sixers could package and not draft one of these guys and go that route and get a guy like that. Maybe
Yeah,
not a Luka Doncic.
especially if you're able to get rid of the contract of Paul George. That's a big talk going into the offseason is trading Paul George. I mean, I don't think you'll be able to get anything of value back for him, but if you can get rid of that contract, that's huge. And then you can use a top five pick to bring in
The two
um
most miserable teams in the NBA need to call each other on the phone and figure something out with each other. The Paul George needs to go to Phoenix, and Kevin Durant needs to come to Philadelphia, and we'll give
No.
you a little
I,
something.
I'm over the aging stars. I'm over it. I'm over it. I don't want
This is,
another one.
bro.
I don't care. I don't even care. That's Kevin Durant.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
over it. I'm done.
there's like an outlier cutoff of like we're talking about like aging stars like Jimmy Butler and this guy and that guy and blah blah blah, and then we're talking about
We
like
brought in James Harden. That's a. I mean, come on.
bro
That
James
that
Harden
guy
when
in
he
his
was
prime. My
James
God.
Harden on the Sixers, he was a pain in the ass. Did he not drop 45 on Boston and
He
just
also played like
completely?
crap the other games. And in the final two games that we lost when we just needed to win one more game when we were up 3-2, he did not play well in those final two
Neither
games.
did Joel.
I
None of them played
know.
well.
I'm done with aging stars.
I mean,
Bring in some young talent. I'm tired
James
of it.
Harden's on like another level, and then like Kevin Durant is like we're talking about like a top 10 player
In
in the
terms of
basketball.
prime, in terms of like the prime of their careers, James Harden is quite close to Kevin Durant. Not in terms of playoff success, but I mean you're looking at during his
James Harden's
run.
really good. Like Kevin Durant is like literally like we're talking about like one of the figure stones of in basketball history. Like we're talking about
Yeah.
one of Like
He's
at
also
worst,
very old. And listen, no matter how good he is this year, when a guy that old comes to Philly, they just end up playing
bro,
not
we're
nearly as
talking about
well.
swapping Paul George for Kevin Durant. You're acting like I'm like, yeah, let's move Tyrese Maxey for Kevin Durant. Like that was the conversation 2 years ago. That was
I mean, yeah,
actually what we were
I
talking
would
about.
much,
But
much, much rather have Kevin Durant than Paul George. Uh if they
I
could
think
somehow
everybody in the
pull
world,
off an Anthony Edwards, I mean, I would bring in Anthony Edwards. I'd love that. Minnesota might be dumb enough to do it. Who knows?
they got called. Nico Harrison called them about a Luka for Anthony Edwards swap.
Now
That
that actually, no, I mean, I would still rather keep Luca, but that wouldn't have been as bad.
yeah, that wouldn't be bad at all. That actually, I mean, he's 3 years younger, so I don't think he's as good as Luka, but he's a better two-way player. Like he's a better defender than Luka is,
Yeah,
but
KD's gonna be 37 next year, man.
he's still dropping 27, bro. He's like
He
at
is,
worst,
but he's not going to do that in a Sixers uniform because that never happens. They all get worse when they
yeah.
come here, except for Quentin Grimes.
James Harden didn't get worse when he
Ever
came here.
since I was a little kid, man, and we brought in Chris Webber and Elton Brand, they all played like shit in Philly. You know,
James Harden never got worse when he played for the Sixers. He's just
yes,
that
he
was the player that he
did.
was at the time.
He
No,
got worse.
no, he wasn't.
He wasn't
And
as good.
Kevin Durant, like you act like Kevin Durant's just like one of like the good stars now that no one will talk about in like 10 years, like DeMar DeRozan. Like he's not like the 10th best at worst
James
player in
Harden
history.
also a big piece of NBA history.
Yeah, and he was fire on the Sixers.
He was not. Come on, he did not have the same burst that he used to. His step back, he didn't get the same separation as he used to. You know, he was still a great player, but he was not prime James Harden, not even in the slightest.
I mean, he that's what he had to do for his team to win. To score 36 back in the day. His numbers look nothing like that, but on a play per play basis.
I'm not talking about points per game. I'm just
And you
when you
also
watched him
remember,
play, it was not the same James Harden. It was still a
bro,
very
as a
good James
playmaker, he's
Harden.
like
It wasn't the
there's
same
there's
Harden.
not much better than James Harden in a Sixers uniform. He was accumulating how many points per game? He was averaging like 22, and then he was literally like with the Sixers, the most underrated part about James Harden, he was like literally averaging 11 assists a game.
That was good. That was good. I'll give him that.
You know how crazy 11 assists a
I
game
will
is?
die on the hill that it was not prime James Harden. And I think a lot of people would agree with me. But
It's not
let's
exact.
not spend too much time on this. I want to talk about one final thing. I want to talk about some promise, a silver lining of this season, a possible problem of a backcourt next year when you package him along with Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain, a guy who I already mentioned, but it was in the midst of talking about something else. Quentin Grimes, man. This guy has been unreal since coming here from Dallas. And as much, I'll tell you what, as much as I wanted to lose to the Mavericks the other night, because of the whole tank, I was also very happy to see him get to shove it in the face of his former team by beating them and going off yet again. He's special in my opinion.
Yeah, he actually is. I thought it was, just like a flash in the pan, lightning in the bottle, as we referred to earlier. But, he actually is really good. And if you watch the highlights, like he's out of there cooking people like 1v1, like perimeter
Yeah,
defense. Like his handle is crazy. Like he just gets to a spot and he's actually making these crazy dribbling combinations and just like, stringing them all together. And then he gets to a spot and just raises up and he's got a beautiful mid range jumper, hits threes.
his
And I was
mid-range
looking at
jumper reminds me of old school basketball. It's kind of that like
he has
old
like
school
a
like
he's
long
dude, he
form.
has that like jump shot that like is when someone tries to tell you how to shoot a basketball and it's like so perfect that it's so uncomfortable looking and like you can't
Yeah,
replicate it. His jumper looks so perfect that it looks so uncomfortable, but like he like perfects it every time and it looks the
it's like
exact same
that
every time.
tall, like long,
Over
like
his head, but like
thin
you can
jump
see it's
shot
like
that
on an angle like this, and then he just
it looks
releases it.
so old school. And watching him shoot it from the mid range, it's just a pleasure to watch.
He looks like a 6'10" power forward shooting like a mid range, but like he's like not. And I
Yeah,
was
no,
looking at his
dude, he's
stats.
good, man. He's good.
I was
And
looking at
I
his stats for March, and I was before the 46-point game. This was after they beat the Mavericks on Sunday, and I was looking at his stats. And they had the game. This was on ESPN through the game log, and they had the Dallas game accumulated into the stat line. And his March stats before the 46-point game were 26 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. I mean, if you told me that in March, Quentin Grimes for the Sixers would be averaging 26, 5, and 4 this deep into the season, I'd be like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Especially a
yeah.
guy that they traded a guy, Caleb Martin. We signed him to an 8-year, what was it? Or $8 million per year was 32 million and total for 4 years with Caleb Martin. I
You gave
thought,
me we gave Caleb Martin a 4-year deal.
I'm pretty sure
I
it
didn't
was 8 for
remember it being
30,
a
or it
4-year
was
deal.
8 years per
My
and
God.
32 million total. And that's like a decent deal for a guy like him for that long. But I thought like, oh, we're going to be paying 8 million to a 31-year-old. That's, we don't know exactly the talent that he's going to have. And now we're going to be worrying about giving Quentin Grimes a contract. And we have Jared McCain coming back from injury and Tyrese Maxey. Now we got 3 guys that actually it looks like doom and gloom that because we have to move on from Paul George, but really all we needed to do was try and actually develop talent for once that wasn't a lottery pick.
Yeah.
Did we ever think about doing that? A guy not named Markel Fultz or Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, did we ever think about a draft pick that can develop into a talent that wasn't taken with one of the top 3 picks?
I'll tell you one thing. I think a Quentin Grimes jersey would be a huge investment. It's one of those things because I'm pretty sure jerseys get like jersey protected if that player leaves the team after the season you bought it
Well,
during.
that's the thing. That's like this type of performance, if like he toned it down, if he didn't drop 46 like he just did the other day, and maybe like 2 or 3 less of the performances that he's had, this would have just been like a folklore of like a 1 season Sixers player going off a
Yeah.
couple games and like dropping this big points on a horrible team that is going in no direction, and then he's not on the roster anymore. But like it's escalated to the point where like he's like a must resign.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, talking about, Nick Nurse giving the final shot to Hood Schifino, if he were to have, went for the win and given the final shot to Quentin Grimes, then you're also talking about, like a 48-point performance against the 2 seed Rockets and a W. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the level of talent Grimes is at. It's not like he's just putting up hollow points on a bad team because
And
his
it's not
level of
like
play is good enough to where he damn well could have beat the Rockets last night if the goal was to win the game.
Joel Embiid, like he's like a strict shooter, like a JJ Redick type guy, and Joel Embiid's out there on the floor, like drawing all the attention of the defense, and the ball is just getting kicked to him. Like he's out there literally with the ball in his hands most of the time, and he's just
Yeah.
creating offense. So, yeah, I'm excited about
No, yeah,
him
they got to
as
bring him
future
back.
plans. The thing about him too is he's a little bit bigger in size, especially than Maxi and Jared McCain. That's what's actually good because like we
Yeah,
were
he
like
could play some small forward if he
he's
needs
six foot
to.
five, so he's a shooting guard, but 6'5" is decent size. Like he's a little bit undersized for a small forward, but he could probably hold
But
his
in
own there
today's in
if needed.
today's NBA, you know what I mean? You
But
see
like
you
like
see it
we're
all the
talking about
time.
it like this would not be a guy that could be a part of the future if it was another 6'1" Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey type, because then we
I
would
think
have
so. I mean, I
accumulation
think
of all
I
those
think
guys.
his future as a Sixer, if he was another, smaller guard would be like, okay, this is a guy who could be our sixth man and excel in that role, or maybe he starts alongside Maxi and McCain is your sixth man. But Quentin Grimes, at 6'5", he can very well end up playing a decent amount of small forward for the Sixers.
All right, so in a world, we could be looking at it like this. Let me paint a couple images to you and let me see how you react here.
Mm.
Starting lineup next season,
Hmm.
if all goes well.
Hmm.
Tyrese Maxey,
Hmm.
at the 1, Jared
Mhm.
McCain
Yep.
at the 2, or vice versa, however you want to go. Quentin Grimes at the 3.
Mm.
Plug in a top 5 pick potentially at the 4.
Mm.
And then probably not Joel Embiid, but maybe, a guy like Yabusele sneaking into the starting lineup, or maybe another center that
I would hope
Andre
Joel
Drummond,
Embiid is your starting center next year, but yeah, I mean, who really knows?
maybe
Um,
Andre Drummond. How do you feel about that lineup?
if
Or
if, if you put Drummond out there with that, and listen, if they end up drafting Cooper Flag and Drummond is your starting center, then that's a great team next year.
And that's not even talking about if they trade Paul George or if they trade also Joel Embiid, what they would get back for those guys in return and what they could bring back
Yeah,
or
it's definitely going to be really interesting to see how things shake out in the offseason. Next week we're going to have an even better lookout on potentially what type of pick the Sixers might be getting after another week of tanking and with even less games to go in the regular season. So we'll have a better outlook next week. We'll also have more Quentin Grimes action to talk about. So yeah, yeah.
real
Tune in
quickly, I'm trying to look at the schedule who they got coming up. So the Sixers should win this next one. It's versus a very patty cake team in the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Sixers should probably win by 25 in that game. But if we're looking forward to the games outside of the Thunder games on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, they got the Spurs on Friday, the Hawks on Sunday, the Pelicans, which that's a tank fest. The Spurs is almost a tank fest in itself too, because De'Aaron Fox is hurt for the season and Wemby's hurt for the season, so they're kind of in a tank fest there. The Wizards, so the tank fest is kind of getting interesting. Then they got the Raptors to end the month, so they got the Wizards, Pelicans, Spurs, and the Raptors all left to play in March. So it's not going to be easy to tank.
Yeah, but here's the thing. That game against the Raptors, that's going to be crucial in terms of the importance of losing that game. That's like trying to make the playoffs and you gotta beat, one of the teams ahead of you in the standings to, jump past them and make it to the playoffs. Although
Brandon
actually now the
Ingram.
Raptors
Let me
have
look at
won.
Let me look at the last time Brandon Ingram's played this year. So Brandon Ingram is listed with like a sprained ankle right now. He's played 18 games this season, has yet to play for the Raptors since being traded at the deadline. He hasn't played since Oklahoma City. The Pelicans played Oklahoma City December 7th. He's been out with a sprained ankle through a trade that happened in February, has yet to suit up for the Raptors. Like they're
Dude,
taking
there have been a lot of players this year in the NBA that have just not shown up and done what they're supposed to do, man.
and they get paid so much money, all
They get paid a
guaranteed.
lot of money, and I
But basketball, I feel
there's
like,
a
is a
good
sport
chunk of
like
them that are, legitimately seriously hurt and can't get on the court, and they're probably clamoring to get on the court. But I think there's a good amount of NBA players that just don't even give a shit.
it's crazy. It
And I
really,
think Paul George is one of them.
yeah, he doesn't care. He followed the money. He was
I
gonna
don't
follow
think
the money
Anthony
regardless.
Davis cares either. I think Anthony Davis is another one that doesn't give a shit.
No, I think Anthony Davis cares. I think Anthony Davis, I don't. I think he cares. I think he has like a serious issue with getting injured though, with just like Joel Embiid. Like they're both just glass bones. Like
Yeah,
that's
maybe.
what my cousin calls Anthony Davis glass bones, because every time he bets on him, he just humbles like a cookie, like your boy Tobias. But thank you guys for tuning in to episode 90 of the Paisan Sports podcast. I'll be probably making fun of Dante if he ever fills out his bracket for March Madness and how bad it's going to be. Because when
Yeah, I
was the
don't
last?
watch. I
You
don't
watch
watch
it? Have you
all.
watched any college basketball game this year?
No.
You're not like secretly watching the Duke games, trying to Cooper Flag, trying to take in some
I
intel.
should probably tune into Duke. I should. Maybe I will, but I have not watched any games yet.
Do you know Cooper Flag sprained his ankle or rolled his
I
ankle
did see that. I
Saturday?
did see that. Anyway, we're gonna have to wrap it up here, though.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back at the end of or the beginning of next week with spring training wrapping up and opening day for the Phillies on Thursday. Maybe some Sixers, more losses, and maybe the Eagles add some additions to the lineup. So until then, me and Dante signing off.